Welcome to this demonstration of the filters that are included with SmartCompare Pro. We're going to go ahead and load in a latent print on the left-hand side, and I'm going to demonstrate the FFT filter. So the FFT filter is designed to remove repetitive patterns from the background. So you may find yourself faced with a latent print that was placed on, let's say, a bank check, and it's got a repetitive pattern in the background, and that repetitive pattern is interfering with your ability to see some of the minutia underneath. And the FFT filter gives you the ability to remove that background pattern. So once the latent fingerprint is loaded into the window, you can navigate up to the Tools menu, come on down to the FFT filter and click on that. And you can apply the filter to the left-hand side or the right-hand side. Typically, it's going to be the left-hand side because that's where your latent prints are, and that's probably where you're going to find this repetitive pattern. So imagine that this was either on a banknote or even maybe it was a latent print that was developed on a Band-Aid, the sticky side of a Band-Aid, and you know how they've got those perforations in the Band-Aid to let air flow through. So that may present you with a dot type pattern like this. When you bring up the FFT filter, you're going to notice 4 different quadrants, and typically the main area of the image is right in the center of this crosshair. And each of these small little stars or satellite stars are going to represent the pattern, the repetitive pattern. And the idea is you want to isolate those and delete those from the image. So you simply open the filter, you locate these repetitive satellite stars, and you delete those from the image. So keep your eye on the actual image here and watch what I'm doing in the FFT filter and see what the end result is. So I'm going to just click and drag a little box around each of these satellite stars. And you'll notice the upper left quadrant and the lower right are mirrors of each other. And the same with the upper right and the lower left, they're mirrors. So when I drag and delete from the upper left, it automatically deletes from the lower right. And you can already see some changes to the image. And the closer you get to the center of that crosshair, the more dramatic the effect is. So I've done the upper left, and now I'm going to isolate some of the stars in the upper right. And I've got one more. And that's done a pretty good job. But you can also move into these crosshairs and delete some of that, and it will have an even more dramatic effect. And you can see that quite a few of the repetitive dots in the background have been removed from the actual image. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And what I'm going to do is bring in that same exact image to the right-hand side. So now you can see the difference between the two. So it hasn't altered the latent print, but it's removed that repetitive background. And from this point, I can go ahead and maybe go into grayscale levels, and I can tweak the actual blacks, midtones, and whites in the image and enhance that a little bit more. And it's going to give you a little bit better looking image to mark your minutia and work with that image without the repetitive patterns obstructing your view. So that's one good example for using the FFT filter. I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page, and I'm going to drag in a couple of the repetitive patterns. So we've got a latent print under here, and we've got these repetitive lines in the background, and I'm going to go ahead and bring up my FFT filter, and there's a lot going on here, but remember, the center of this crosshair is where your main bulk of the image is located at in this histogram. And we're looking for these satellite stars and stuff that's up in these quadrants, and we want to get rid of those. So I'm going to go ahead and isolate some of these bright stars. And you can already see that a lot of the repetitive lines that were in the image between the left and right are now gone in the left-hand side. I'm going to do the same in the upper left quadrant. And you can continue tweaking this and coming down and getting rid of a lot of these repetitive lines. So I'm going to go in and see what this does if I take out some of this. It starts to look even better. So that's not looking too bad. I've got some stuff out here and I'm not sure how that will affect the image, but let's go ahead and delete those. Maybe some of these lines up here. And let's see what getting rid of that does. So that's starting to look a lot better than it originally did. Let's take some of this out. I think we may have done everything that we can as far as the FFT filter goes on this one. If we could get a little bit tighter in here towards the center. I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Now take a look at the two different images. The original is on the right-hand side, where the FFT filter is on the left-hand side. Looks a little bit better. I can go up now and start playing around with some of my other filters, tweaking the grayscale levels. And now we've got a little bit better. We can start to see some of the minutia here. If I grab my pencil, I've got an ending ridge there. Looks like I might have one there. Maybe I've got something going on here. When I start tracing the ridges, ending ridge there, and you start working your way through this impression, you're going to start picking up a lot of the different features in the ridge detail that maybe wasn't visible when you had all those lines there. So that's another good example of getting rid of this repetitive pattern in the background of the print. I'm going to go ahead and refresh my screen, and this time I'm going to go ahead and drag in a print that was developed with cyanoacrylate and preserved on a black fingerprint card, and you can see the white ridges on a black background. Some people are completely fine working with this. Other people prefer black ridges on a white background, a little bit more traditional. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate my print around till it's in the correct orientation. At this point, with a simple click of a button, I can go to Invert Colors. Click on that. I'm going to apply it to the left-hand side only. As soon as I hit apply, it inverts the colors. And now I've got black ridges on a white background. I can go up again, now start playing around with my grayscale levels. Sliding those back and forth and getting it to where it's really defined. And that's a pretty good looking print right there. Very easy to find the minutia. Can go up, select some yellow so it's easy to see, and just go through the print and start marking your minutia. Easy to work with and very simple to select those tools. And one of the other filters, let's go ahead and refresh the screen. Let's grab this print and bring it in. We'll bring it to both sides so we can see the before and after. One of the other filters that we've got is the log Gabor filter. And we can bring this up. We're only going to apply it to the left-hand side. And this, to be honest with you, I've not played around with this particular print using this filter, so this is going to be a live experiment here. But I think that this filter might be good for bringing out the details in these two overlapping prints. So immediately we grab this wavelength and it's starting to separate the print. You can drag these different sliders back and forth and give us a little bit of a separation between these two prints. and make it a little bit easier to pick out the minutia in the overlapping areas. So that's not too bad. I can go up again. I prefer the grayscale levels. Can tweak those a little bit. Go ahead and apply that. Some of these, let's increase our pencil. Some of these features, you can see this ridge a little bit better coming through. You can see it a little bit over here, but it's a little bit more defined. You've got a little bit more contrast going on between these two print impressions, and you're able to kind of separate the ridges that are running this direction versus this direction. So it makes it easier to pick out the ending ridges and the bifurcations than if you were just working on the original image over here. So that's the log Gabor filter, and when you apply it, it immediately turns the image into a grayscale image and starts breaking it down into the different contrast levels. I'm going to go ahead and once again refresh my screen. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to grab another example of a cyanoacrylate fumed impression. And you'll notice again, we've got white ridges on a background or a black background. And this was also taken in color, this photograph. So we can do a couple of different things to this. Zoom in a little bit here, center the print. And first thing we can do is we can go up and click on grayscale. And it will take a color photograph and immediately convert it into a grayscale image. So by clicking that button, all of our color is removed from the image, and now we just have a grayscale image. And I can go up to invert colors like we did earlier and change it from white ridges to black ridges. And at this point, we can go ahead and play around with, let's say, brightness and contrast. Can lower the brightness, increase the contrast, get a little bit more definition in the ridges there, and apply that. And once again, at this point, we can go up and select our pencil and start marking various minutia. One of the other filters that we've got, we refer to it as the chemically enhanced filter. I'm going to go ahead and grab the chemically enhanced prints here. You'll notice that they're inverted, or not inverted, but they're rotated in the incorrect orientation. So I'm going to spin those 180 degrees around, get them in the correct orientation. In this particular filter, the chemically processed prints filter brings up a window, and what this does is it allows you to pick a color, and you can click on any one of these different prints. It will select the color in that print. It will then allow you to reduce non-selected colors. So for instance, if I pick a color, and let's go with the red. If I click on this red, it now grabs this hue. The intensity is 100. If I start reducing the non-red colors, it starts dropping out the background. So several of these prints had very little red in them, and they completely disappeared. So you would want to imagine yourself into a position where maybe you've got a black fingerprint developed with powder on a colored background. Now, if you selected that black or you selected that color, you can then drop out everything else around it. Left a little bit of this print there because there was some red in it, and you can change the tolerance of the amount of red. So now I'm sliding the tolerance. It has a lot less tolerance in what it's selecting, and it's now getting rid of what was a little bit of red here, and you're only left with that one single red print in the upper right-hand corner. You can play around with the intensity, break out those ridges a little bit. When you're happy with that, you can apply it. It's still not a great print to be dealing with, but you've reduced everything around it and isolated just this one print. We can go up and convert that just to grayscale. And at this point, we can go and start messing around with the grayscale levels. Might be able to get some additional features out of this. Not a whole lot of change there. That may be the best that we can do with this. But I think this gives you a good example of isolating colors and dropping out backgrounds. And again, we can go up, and if we find the color filter and we get rid of that, it gets rid of all that isolation in the background. This is another example of a chemically processed fingerprint, and we can go ahead and use the RGB levels to adjust the red, green, and blue levels to bring out a little bit more contrast in a color print. And what you would do is just slide these back and forth, start dropping out some of those colors and getting it to a point where it's a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Can get a little bit more separation between the ridges there. If I leave it like that and then I go up, convert it to grayscale, maybe I want to rotate this to a different orientation. Move it up, and at this point then I can go and start messing around with my grayscale levels. Lighten it up a little bit. And now you can start marking your minutia. And you'll also notice that we've still got some white ridges on a dark background, so we can go up and invert those colors and give us a traditional looking latent fingerprint, something that we can mark up in a side-by-side comparison. So some of those are the most popular filters that we've got in the software. So if you have any suggestions, feel free to send us an email at info@forensics.com, and we will be happy to look at additional filters and develop those. So thank you very much.